Moto Grand Prix is brought to you by Suzuki. Ride the winds of change.
This week on Motor Grand Prix, Marlboro Team Rainey will run KRJR on a 250 this year. Aprilia's 400 project is progressing slower than expected. We'll be taking a closer look at the new fuel regulations for 1994, and it's always nice to see a new face in the paddock, but who's that girl? In 1994, Yamaha returns to Grand Prix racing's smallest class after 19 years. The Hondas run in factory colours this year because HRC has no sponsors. Harris have been at it for 10 years, since Barry Sheen rode a Harris Suzuki in 1984. We join fans at the Creek as they enjoy bike racing, rollerblade aerobatics and rock concerts. Spaniard Alberto Puig surprises everybody in his first ever 500 race. Mick Doohan's older brother made his Grand Prix debut at Eastern Creek. And why did Luca Cadalora use a 1993 Rock chassis to finish second at Eastern Creek? Shah Alam hosts a Grand Prix for the fourth time. We'll look forward to that, and we'll end with a reminder of the standings in our own ranking before the Malaysian Grand Prix. The announcement at Eastern Creek came as a surprise to only a few people and was for many the high spot of the weekend.
I have an announcement to make today. In conjunction with Kenny this year through my rehab program, I remember him saying the first week when I was in the hospital that, Wayne, when you're ready, there'll be a team ready for you. And we all figured that was 1995, and even myself. But thanks to the help from everybody and all the support that I've received this year, I've been able to speed up the rehab program, and so I asked Kenny, I said, hey, I remember what you said there in the beginning, and I'd like to do something this year for 1994. And so we're going to announce the Marlboro Team Rainey 250 Grand Prix team this year. Kenny Roberts Jr. is my rider, and I'm going to see technical assistance from Team Roberts, so you'll probably be seeing me at every race from now on this year.
It was hardly a surprise to anyone who knew him. Wayne Rainey's recovery after the massive trauma of Misano has been so rapid that his plans to go racing again were indeed brought forward by a whole year to 1994.
The last 6 months have gone by really quick, and been working really hard to get to this stage of where I'm at. Just so happened, I've had some talks with Philip Morris last year and the beginning of, just after the accident this year, and we thought we could work on something, start talking about 95, but as it turned out, rehab came along really well, and I put a lot of hard work to get to this race here in Australia. But also, we finalized the team with Philip Morris last Thursday before I left for Australia, and I'm very happy with it. It's going to be quite different.
This may well turn out to be the understatement of a lifetime. The rider is the tip of the iceberg, and there are 15/16ths of it out of sight behind the scenes. From now on, Wayne Rainey is going to have to forget that last 16th that's been his life for so long and concentrate on the big picture, and he knows it won't be easy.
I'm starting off fresh. It's a whole new business for me. Being a motorcycle racer, you just think about, or being a world champion, you just think about yourself and what it takes for you to be the best guy out there. But being a team owner, there's much more aspects to the team that I never had to deal with before. So it's a learning curve for me at the moment, and take it a step at a time.
That first step, in public at least, should be at Jerez when KRJR gets over the training injury that left him with a broken arm and a slow start to his first full season in Grand Prix racing. Yes, we know, and for regular fans of Motor Grand Prix, we apologise for showing the same pictures once again, but they are the only ones we've got so far of the revolutionary V-twin Aprilia 400 when it was first shown at Mugello. Since then, Loris Reggiani has ridden the first kilometres on a short track Aprilia has inside the factory at Noale, and for last week the Italian maker had scheduled a big test in Mugello, the venue of the Italian Grand Prix in July, but it didn't happen and the project seems to be going slower than expected. Aprilia say they want the machine to be ready for the start of the European season on May the 8th at Jerez. Despite this new delay, they say they can still meet that deadline, but they can't afford any more problems if they want to reach that first goal. The latest news from Italy says that another test session has been announced for this week, so we hope that in future Motor Grand Prix we really will be able to bring you pictures and the up-to-date position. The introduction of 100-octane avgas to replace last year's 124-octane fuel seems to have been accommodated by all the teams with little problem. But it isn't as simple as it might sound. Modern car engines have adapted to unleaded fuel fairly easily thanks to the versatility of electronic ignition and electronic fuel injection. For racing engines, the story isn't as simple, as Lucky Strike Suzuki's Stuart Shenton confirms without going into any details at all.
Has been a problem. I think people have overcome it in different ways. We've got our own particular answer for it. I guess other people have got around the problem in other ways. There are some new things that we've done that seem to be working fairly well for us.
That's about as much as the team will say about their solution to the situation. HRC, with fuel injection on their bikes, might well have found it easier, and the NSRs were 20 kilometres an hour faster than everyone else on the front straight at Eastern Creek. But for the rest of the paddock, using conventional fuel systems, the new rule has forced new thinking.
Yeah, we're still using carburetors, so there's only so much we can do in that. We can't program an engine map as such, but certainly in the long run, the things we're doing now hopefully will make the two strokes maybe more friendly for the road user.
It is indeed a clear illustration of the philosophy that racing improves the breed and the product. When racers are forced to deal with these problems, they find solutions very quickly, far more quickly perhaps than a room full of boffins and scientists. And because they work in secret, they don't necessarily all choose the same answer to a problem. That means every individual solution will be tested against all the others in the demanding arena of motorsport. And theoretically, the ideal answer should come out on top.
There are simple ways to do it, I think. But the difficult way is to do it and keep the sort of power and the sort of engine character that we had before. At the moment, we seem to have been able to hold on to that.
This season we'll see how the various solutions stand up to each other on the track, and perhaps sometime soon we'll see the environmentally friendly two-stroke running unleaded petrol and delivering tremendous power from small size and weight, reaching car production lines as well as motorcycles. The pit lane in Australia was all agog, if that's entirely the right word under these circumstances. Just who, everyone wanted to know, was that girl with Michael Doohan? Could it be, people asked? Some seemed to know her pretty well, and some just took the pictures, which only goes to show that they must fall into the 2% of the population who buy books, because you had to read books to recognise the young lady in question. Alternately billed as either a fitness instructor, a hotel management graduate or a police officer on a sabbatical, you could find out a great deal more about her within the pages of a certain well-known publication. Naturally, we on Motor Grand Prix refrain from examining the marked centrefold in any greater detail than that shown on the cover. And naturally, the constraints of modesty prohibit us from doing so now for your benefit. In fact, we find ourselves obliged to remind you that there's nothing quite like the real thing. Yamaha had a good harvest in 1993. They won the 500cc manufacturer's title and the 250 rider championship with Tetsuya Harada. Those successes encouraged them to try the 125 class as well in 1994, and now Yamaha has Grand Prix bikes in all three classes and can compete in every race with their major Japanese rival, Honda. Their return to 125 at Eastern Creek ended an absence of no less than 19 years. Their new weapon is the TZ125, which uses similar engine and chassis technology to the 250, and no less than 5 riders have chosen it to compete in this year's series. Yamaha's strategy is angled directly towards the smaller teams and privateers, so the TZ125 is designed to be easy to tune and maintain. Though the factory doesn't support an official team, all 5 riders will be assisted. Probably the cream of this crop is the team formed by veteran Spaniard Jorge Martinez and Japanese rookie Yokiyashi Kato, who won the Japanese National Championship last year. Both Martinez and Kato showed great potential at the IRTA test at Jerez and in qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix. But the race was another thing. Kato started well and was leading the field in the opening laps, but he was a little bit too aggressive and crashed. Martinez was also among the front runners early on, but then mechanical problems, the first after more than 4,000 kilometres of pre-season testing, slowed him down, and then he too crashed on lap 3. It was certainly not the start Yamaha wanted for the 1994 season. The other Yamaha riders in the 125 class are German Stefan Prine, Austrian Manfred Baumann and Frenchman Frédéric Petit, who rides for Christian Saron's Yamaha France outfit. None of them took a single point in the opening race. Prine was classified best, finishing in 19th position. Just a name, that's what everyone wanted to know before the start of the season, the name of the sponsor for the Works Honda team. Negotiations went on in strict secrecy during the off-season, and just when it seemed certain that Duran, Crivellet, Ito and Okada would be backed by Pepsi, those negotiations broke down. So at Eastern Creek, the HRC bikes wore no colours other than the official factory livery, an eye-catching design of blue, orange and white. That's how they raced in Australia, and according to HRC boss Aguma-san, they can afford to do so all this season and the next, though that doesn't close the door on the possibility that sometime during '94 they might reach agreement with another major sponsor. The colours of the shell-backed Harris Yamaha make it hard to miss, even though the bike wasn't a top contender in 1993. That's partly because Sean Emmett was learning Grand Prix racing circuit by circuit. He finished 19th overall, but 8th in the Privateers World Championship, a world completely divorced from the high-budget factory teams. It's a world Steve Harris knows well. Though Sean and the Shell team were newcomers last year, this season the Harris name celebrates 10 years in Grand Prix racing. It all began in 1984 with a Harris frame Suzuki and a rider called Barry Sheen, though it doesn't seem like 10 years to Steve Harris.
Feels more like 110. That's probably because he had to work with me, it seems like 110 years.
But it wasn't. The Harris name was on that Suzuki back in 1984. Barry Sheen was 6th in the World Championship that year. His best result was a 3rd place in the South African Grand Prix at Kyalami, and he remembers that year, his last season of Grand Prix racing, with a smile.
Oh, absolutely. You know, in '84, my bike handled the best of any bike I'd ever ridden. And unfortunately, you know, if the engine had been powerful, it would have been a really good package.
This year's Harris carries the Big Bang engine and has a new, lower frame with a wider range of adjustment. It should go better than last year and should allow the team to finish higher in the points table. But it's always an uphill struggle against teams with more resources, more support and more money. For the smaller outfits, Grand Prix racing is not an easy business to be in. The rewards are small unless you're an enthusiast as well.
Well, he's an enthusiast. I think the last thing Steve is a businessman, you know, because when you're involved in... Sorry about that, Steve. he's just very good. He's brilliant at his work, him and Lester, and, you know, they make very good products, and he's just a very good guy.
With that kind of recommendation, Steve Harris ought to be comfortable at the prospect of another 10 years in Grand Prix racing, didn't he?
No, really, it's all we know, but it is tough. I mean, as everybody knows, sponsorship's hard to find. The cost of running these bikes is getting greater and greater, especially with the strength of the yen against most other currencies. So products that we were buying from Japan, components we were buying for, say, £10,000, only two and a half years ago, the same thing's costing us £16,000 now. And that reflects in a big hole in what we get from IRTA, any prize money and expenses we get.
It seems fairly obvious that to continue racing for 10 years, always against difficult odds, you must really love the sport you're in.
I don't feel like I love it too much this morning.
Sean Emmett qualified 13th and finished 14th, which is better than he did in Australia last year. The Harris-entered wildcard rider Scott Doohan was 12th in his home Grand Prix.
Now we move us one my love. Your touch no longer strains. Caressing memories yet above. The driver winds all change. Winds of change take me higher. Winds of change set me free.
Suzuki, ride the winds of change.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Charles, you are a role model.
I'm out of here. Bye-bye. Hey, Mike, I got my own shoe with my own initials on it.
Yeah? Well, I have my own shoes with my own name on it.
Well, can you do this in your shoe, Mr. I don't play anymore?
Yeah, but I don't have to. I'm retired.
I'm not. My shoes got this strap.
Laces.
Black.
White.
White's wimpy. And you can't keep it clean.
Size 13.
16.
Ooh. Nike Air.
Mine's got more.
I went ball first.
Did not.
Did too.
Was more than just a motorsport meeting, it was a party with a constant flow of activity to keep the fans in the mood. Spaniard Alberto Puig was the biggest surprise of the Australian Grand Prix at Eastern Creek. In his first ever 500 Grand Prix, he was able to ride at a very high level, showing that he could become a very competitive rider in this top 500 class. In qualifying, everyone expected Beattie, Barros, Crivellet or even Ito to be the flag bearers of the younger generation against Schwantz, Doohan, Cadalora and Kaczynski. But it was Puig who achieved the outstanding performance and placed his NSR 5th on the grid behind the top men. Even the 27-year-old Spaniard didn't expect to do that well himself. I don't know. I first tested the bike in November in Barcelona, and then we decided to move up to 500. Since then, I've been riding well and getting used to it. Step by step, I'm improving. But 500 is much more difficult than 250, and you must go slowly. Riding Cito Pons, Ducati's Honda, Puig demonstrated that he's a potential winner in the 500 class, something that might seem strange considering he's never won a Grand Prix race at all and that his 250 career wasn't all that successful. In 250, sincerely, I had very bad luck. The two opportunities I did have for a good year, I was seriously injured, and that's why I was almost unnoticed. Now I hope that this doesn't happen again so I can fight more strongly in the 500s. Starting 5th on the grid, Puig couldn't maintain the position but still completed a serious race, battling with Crivellet and Barros all the way. But though everybody congratulated him afterwards, Puig wasn't entirely satisfied with the result, and you could tell by his face that he had hoped to have done better. For the first race, I am happy. I finished, which isn't bad, and I rode with people today who are better than me, both Alex Crivellet and Barros. I stayed with them, and for the first race, that's good, but also I think I could soon finish higher up. The likeable Puig is somewhat unconventional in his attitude and seldom savours the good moments. He always wants to be better, ride faster, and to reach more difficult goals. I'm optimistic because I haven't ridden the bike that much. It's my first season, my first race, and sincerely I believe that I can fight for better positions in 4 or 5 races' time. The season's very long and I don't want to ruin it. The other day I crashed and I don't like crashing. I prefer to go step by step, and in Europe I think I will be faster. He was the surprise of the first Grand Prix in Australia, but next comes Charleroi, where he's done well before, so keep an eye out for a good finish from Alberto Puig. There are 2 wildcard riders in each class at every Grand Prix, and it's unusual for them to do well and unusual for them to attract a great deal of attention. But in Australia, the 500 wildcard rider entered by Shell Team Harris did get noticed, mostly because his name rings a bell. Scott Doohan is Michael's older brother, but actually followed him into racing. Runner-up in last year's Australian Superbike Series, this is his first Grand Prix.
I'm not sure. I suppose it can't hurt getting all the publicity. It certainly helps the sponsors that have been helping me out over the years, and no, hopefully I can't see it hindering anything. It can only help.
Scott Doohan had the same pragmatic approach to the race itself, very clear in his own mind about what was realistically possible in 30 laps of Eastern Creek.
Mate, I just got to play it pretty cool, you know. It's a one-off sort of thing for me, so mate, I've got to keep it shiny side up and hopefully just go a little bit quicker until race day, and then in the race see how it pans out. But mate, if I get top 15, I'll be real happy. I think a lot of people don't realise what it's like out there with the different bikes and stuff, but a lot of the people in the know, I think that they're the ones that count, and I don't know how hard it is out there. And no, I'm feeling pretty happy. We're running pretty close to the front of the private bikes, and mate, I think that's all I can do.
It all went pretty nearly to plan too. Scott Doohan was a pretty consistent 15th until the end of the race. On lap 27 he moved up into 12th place and made his point fairly convincingly. After a mixed result from several long test sessions, pit lane gossip in Australia pointed its finger at the 1994 Yamaha and said that once again it wasn't up to scratch. It's a virtual repeat of what happened at the start of last year, only this time the team had an alternative ready to go. Both riders qualified and raced on what is properly considered to be a rock chassis.
The chassis was designed by Yamaha. We raced it in 1991. It's built in France under a license agreement with Rock and Harris as far as that goes. So basically it is a Yamaha chassis made somewhere else in the world.
The measured tones and considered phrases give the key to an underlying frustration. From the outside, the chassis is a fairly simple looking thing, but obviously there's more to redesigning it than you might think. Small changes can make a big difference. At the start of this year, we saw Yamaha, Honda and Suzuki all apparently having the same sort of trouble with their 94 machines. Perhaps an indication that we may be just about due for a complete revolution in chassis design.
I think that there will be, sure. There's got to be. The next step has to be something better. A chassis on a motorcycle is very complicated. I would say much more complicated than a Formula One car, for example, because you've got such a small area to work with. You don't have the opportunity to do things structurally that you want to do because of the width of the motorcycle, the length of the motorcycle. You're housing basically an engine that's far bigger than the vehicle. Puts out far more horsepower with a lot less weight than anything in four-stroke racing. So you know, there are some real problems in a motorcycle chassis. The chassis has to literally be, I mean, just to build a carbon one, for example, is very, very complicated, I can tell you.
That would explain why we haven't yet seen the full carbon chassis.
You haven't seen it yet because of the cost. You know, the cost of building a motorcycle chassis versus a Formula One chassis, I'm not so sure that the motorcycle chassis wouldn't be more.
Cagiva, of course, already have a half-carbon frame for 1994, and it seems that the small Italian factory might be leading the way in chassis design. For the fourth consecutive season, Malaysia has a round of the World Championship. The old Shah Alam track was rebuilt 5 years ago when Prince Raja Muda, whose home's close to the circuit, decided to promote a Grand Prix. The first took place in 1991. The twisty Shah Alam is a 3.5 kilometre racetrack located about 10 kilometres from Kuala Lumpur city centre. The sticky ambience as temperature and humidity chase triple figures, the kindness of the Malaysian people and the evening rains are the main features that will be familiar to Grand Prix regulars. Shah Alam's a frequent choice of winter test venue because of that warm weather. That means almost all the top teams have been there before the season started and they know it very well. Being the second race of the year, the Malaysian Grand Prix will be a confirmation of success in Australia for some and the opportunity to recover from negative results for others. Kaczynski, Biaggi and Sakata would like to repeat and confirm their respective leads as their rivals try to stop them. Last year's Malaysian Grand Prix had clear 500 and 125 winners. The most exciting race was the 250, not only during the race but also after. Two Japanese riders, Aoki and Harada, disputed victory all the way to the line. Aoki scored his first Grand Prix win and Harada confirmed his championship lead. Loris Capirossi was third, but the marshals claimed that he and 4 other riders had started before the green light and gave him a 1-minute penalty. He lost out on a rostrum place and some valuable points that would have been very handy at the end of the season. In the 500 race, Wayne Rainey dominated, leading Darrell Beattie and Kevin Schwantz as he scored his first victory of the year. The Californian and the Texan beginning a duel that would thrill the fans all season long. And in the 125 race, it was Dirk Rowdies who won ahead of Kazuto Sakata. Exactly the same result as in Australia just 1 week earlier, and more advanced notice of what the 1993 season had in store as Dirk Rowdies proceeded to rip off 9 wins in the season to become an easy championship with Sakata in second place. Remember that just before the Malaysian Grand Prix, MGP's own ranking combining all 3 classes and counting the final race positions using the same scoring system but adding a 5-point bonus for pole looks like this, with Sakata at the top of the tree sharing the lead with Kaczynski. Biaggi and Capirossi follow, then it's Peter Ertl, Doriano Romboni and Luca Cadalora. Kevin Schwantz right down there in joint 10th place, but you have to look a long way down the table to find Dirk Rowdies.